On a busy morning at the airport, Flight 247 was preparing for takeoff. The sun shone brightly, and passengers moved through the terminal, ready for their journey. Among them was Captain James, a skilled pilot with years of experience. He was black and took great pride in his job. Today, he was flying the plane, and he wanted everything to go smoothly. As he boarded the aircraft, he greeted the crew and the passengers with a warm smile. The atmosphere was generally friendly, but there was one flight attendant, Lisa, who didn't share that feeling. Lisa had a reputation for being blunt and had often shown her bias against people of different backgrounds. She believed she was better than others and felt that her opinion about how things should be done was the only one that mattered. As the passengers settled into their seats, Lisa noticed Captain James in the cockpit. Instead of respecting him as the captain, she felt a wave of negativity. She walked down the aisle with her head held high, determined to make her feelings known. She reached the cockpit and confronted James. "Do you really think you belong here?" she sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I hope you know what you're doing." James was taken aback by her words. He had worked hard to get where he was and knew he was qualified for the job. He took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm. "I'm here to do my job just like you," he replied evenly. He didn't want to escalate the situation, especially not before takeoff. But Lisa wasn't done. Feeling emboldened by her anger, she leaned closer and, without warning, slapped him across the face. The sound echoed in the small cockpit, and time seemed to freeze. James was shocked, his mind racing. He couldn't believe what had just happened. The other crew members and passengers, who had been quietly settling in, suddenly turned to look. The tension in the air was thick, and everyone felt the weight of the moment. James knew he had to keep control of the situation. He was the captain, after all. He took a moment to collect himself and then calmly said, "That was uncalled for. We're here to work together." He didn't want to react with anger, but inside, he felt hurt and frustrated. Lisa, realizing she had crossed a line, stepped back but didn't apologize. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed away, muttering under her breath. The atmosphere in the cabin was tense. Passengers whispered among themselves, unsure of how to respond. Some felt sympathy for James, while others were taken aback by Lisa's behavior. As the plane prepared for takeoff, James focused on his job. He needed to ensure that the flight would be safe and comfortable for everyone. He checked the instruments, spoke with the co-pilot, and began to steer the plane down the runway. His professionalism shone through despite the incident. But the slap had left a mark on his spirit. He couldn't shake off the sting, not just physically, but emotionally. He thought about how hard he had worked to reach this point in his career and how someone could try to undermine him so easily. As the plane took off and climbed into the sky, passengers looked out at the clouds, trying to forget the awkwardness from moments before. James spoke over the intercom, reassuring everyone about the flight's progress and sharing details about the expected weather. His calm voice brought a sense of comfort to the cabin, but Lisa remained in the back, seething with anger. Passengers were still whispering, some casting curious glances at James, while others silently supported him. James, despite the earlier conflict, kept his focus on flying. He reminded himself that his duty was to everyone on board. The incident became a turning point for both James and Lisa. In the cockpit, James reflected on how he would handle the rest of the flight. He wanted to show that he could rise above the negativity. Lisa, on the other hand, was grappling with her own prejudices. Though she was angry, she also felt a small flicker of doubt about her beliefs. As the flight continued, the initial shock of the slap began to fade, but the tension lingered. The flight attendants moved through the aisles, serving drinks and snacks, but Lisa remained distant and cold. Her behavior made passengers uncomfortable, and they started to wonder about her ability to serve them well. James, however, was determined to keep the flight on track. He kept his head high, focusing on the tasks at hand, making announcements, and ensuring that everyone was safe. He wanted to prove that he was a capable pilot, despite the disrespect he had faced. The first part of the flight passed with unease hanging in the air, setting the stage for what was to come. Little did they know, the real test of their teamwork was just around the corner, and it would require both of them to rise above their differences for the sake of everyone on board. As Flight 247 soared high above the clouds, the initial shock of the incident began to settle. Captain James focused on flying, his years of training guiding him through every turn and altitude change. However, the atmosphere in the cabin was anything but calm. Passengers felt the tension, and whispers filled the air. In the cockpit, James took deep breaths to steady himself. He was a professional and needed to maintain his composure. His co-pilot, Mike, sensed the change in mood and glanced over at him. "You okay?" he asked quietly. James nodded but didn't say much. He was still processing Lisa's slap. It felt like more than just a physical attack. It was a reminder of the challenges he faced in his career. "Yeah, just dealing with some stuff," he replied, trying to shake off the feelings of anger and hurt. Back in the cabin, Lisa was in a bad mood. She felt embarrassed and frustrated. As she walked down the aisles, she overheard passengers whispering about what had happened. Some were expressing support for James, while others seemed confused about why she had acted that way. "Can you believe that?" one passenger said to another. "I've never seen anything like it." Lisa caught snippets of their conversations and her anger bubbled up again. She thought, "How dare they judge me?" She tried to dismiss their comments and focus on her job, but it was hard. Every time she passed by James in the cockpit, she felt a mix of resentment and guilt. She didn't want to acknowledge that she had done something wrong. Instead, she convinced herself that she had to stand her ground. As the flight continued, Lisa served drinks and snacks, but her demeanor was cold. She snapped at passengers, which surprised many. Normally, she was sharp and efficient, but today, her attitude was different. Passengers were taken aback. They could sense that something was off. One elderly woman asked for a refill, and Lisa rolled her eyes. "You can wait," she replied sharply. The woman's smile faded, and she looked confused. Others in the row shifted uncomfortably in their seats. James noticed Lisa's behavior from the cockpit. He could hear her raised voice and saw the frowns on passengers' faces through the small window. He felt a mix of disappointment and concern. He wanted to maintain a positive atmosphere on the flight, but Lisa was making it difficult. "Do you want me to say something?" Mike asked, glancing at the cabin. He could see the tension and felt the need to address it. "It might help if you step in." James shook his head. "No, it's better if I stay focused on flying. I'll handle it later if it gets worse." He didn't want to create more conflict but also felt responsible for the passengers' experience. Meanwhile, Lisa continued her rounds, ignoring the uncomfortable looks from the passengers. In her mind, she felt justified in her actions. She thought, they don't understand what it's like to be judged. But deep down, she also felt a flicker of doubt. As the flight progressed, the cabin was filled with an uneasy silence. Passengers whispered among themselves, some exchanging concerned glances. It was clear that the slap had affected everyone, even those who were not directly involved. James kept his focus on flying, but he couldn't ignore the weight of the situation. He felt the responsibility of being a leader, not just in the cockpit but also as a role model for everyone on the flight. He thought about how to bridge the gap between himself and Lisa, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. During one of his announcements, James spoke with warmth, trying to lift the mood. "We'll be flying smoothly for the next hour, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the views." His calm voice reached the passengers, and a few smiles appeared, but Lisa remained distant, avoiding eye contact with him. As they reached cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign turned off. Passengers began to move around more, stretching their legs and chatting quietly. James glanced at the cabin and saw that some passengers were trying to engage Lisa, but she was unresponsive. "Is everything okay back there?" one passenger asked, attempting to break the ice. Lisa shrugged, not bothering to hide her annoyance. "Just doing my job," she replied curtly, causing the passenger to retreat awkwardly. James felt a knot in his stomach. He knew he had to do something to improve the situation. After a few moments of deliberation, he decided to approach Lisa directly during a lull in service. When she returned to the cockpit for a moment, he took a deep breath. "Hey, can we talk for a second?" he asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. Lisa crossed her arms, defensive. "What about?" she asked, her voice sharp. "I just wanted to check in. I know things got heated earlier," he began, trying to create a bridge. "We need to work together for the passengers." Lisa scoffed. "Why should I listen to you? You're not the only one who has a job here. I understand that, but we have a responsibility to everyone on this flight," James replied, keeping his voice calm. "I think we can both do better." For a moment, Lisa hesitated. She could see that James was trying to reach out, but her pride kept her from admitting she might be wrong. "Whatever," she said finally, turning to leave the cockpit. As she stepped out, James felt a mix of frustration and sadness. He had hoped for a moment of understanding, but it hadn't happened. He returned to his controls, focusing on the flight, but the lingering tension weighed heavily on his mind. Back in the cabin, Lisa tried to push aside her feelings. She focused on her tasks, but her mind kept drifting back to James and the slap. She felt a growing sense of isolation. The passengers were no longer just silent observers. They were witnesses to her actions, and it made her uncomfortable. As the flight continued, James and Lisa found themselves in a silent standoff. James worked hard to maintain the flight's course and keep the passengers safe, while Lisa struggled with her internal battle. She didn't want to admit her biases, yet they lingered in her mind. Passengers began to relax as they settled into the flight, but Lisa's attitude remained cold. Some started to avoid her, preferring to wait for another flight attendant to help them. James noticed this and felt a sense of responsibility to ensure that everyone felt welcome and cared for. With every passing minute, the situation seemed to grow more complicated. Lisa's behavior affected the entire atmosphere of the flight, making it hard for James to focus. He thought about how they could overcome this moment and create a better environment for everyone. As they flew over mountains and valleys, the landscape below was beautiful, a stark contrast to the tension inside the plane. James tried to focus on the scenery, hoping it would calm him. He thought about how he could turn this situation around, but he knew it would take effort from both of them. The flight continued without incident, but the atmosphere remained strained. Passengers were becoming more aware of the rift between the flight attendants, and some began to talk about it openly. James felt the pressure to address it, but he also wanted to pick the right moment. In the cockpit, he kept an eye on the instruments, aware that soon they would need to prepare for the next phase of the flight. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake off the feeling that the real challenge lay ahead, one that would require both him and Lisa to confront their differences for the sake of everyone on board. As the hours ticked by, both James and Lisa were faced with their own thoughts. James wanted to prove himself not just as a pilot but as a leader. Lisa was struggling with her beliefs and the impact of her actions. The flight was about to take a turn, one that would test both of them in ways they never expected. Part 3. The emergency. As Flight 247 flew steadily through the sky, the atmosphere was still tense. Captain James focused on the instruments, doing his best to keep everything under control. He felt the weight of responsibility not just for the plane but for all the passengers and crew on board. In the cabin, the mood remained uneasy, with some passengers casting cautious glances at Lisa, the flight attendant who had slapped the captain. Suddenly, a loud alarm rang out in the cockpit, breaking the uneasy silence. James's heart raced as he quickly looked at the instruments. The warning light flashed red, indicating a critical issue with one of the engines. "Mike, we've got a problem," James said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What's happening?" Mike asked, leaning closer to the controls. "It looks like we have an engine failure. We need to act fast," James replied, his mind racing through the emergency protocols he had trained for. James took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm. He knew that panic would only make things worse. He began to follow the steps outlined in their emergency procedures, but he also realized that he needed help from the cabin. "Lisa," he called over the intercom, "I need you in the cockpit now." In the cabin, Lisa had just finished serving drinks and was trying to shake off the earlier tension. The sound of the alarm echoed through the plane, and she felt her stomach drop. She rushed to the cockpit, her heart racing. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to mask her fear with bravado. "Engine failure," James said, his voice firm. "We need to prepare for an emergency landing. I need your help to keep the passengers calm." Lisa felt a rush of adrenaline. The reality of the situation hit her hard. She had been so focused on her own feelings that she hadn't considered the gravity of their situation. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice steadying. "First, we need to make an announcement. Tell everyone to stay seated and fasten their seatbelts. Explain that we are experiencing a technical issue," James instructed, his focus razor-sharp. Lisa nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She understood now that the safety of everyone was at stake. "I can do that," she replied, stepping back into the cabin. She took a deep breath and approached the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your flight attendant speaking. We are currently experiencing a technical issue. Please remain seated and fasten your seatbelts. We will keep you updated as we work through this situation." Her voice echoed through the cabin, and she saw passengers tense up. Fear flickered in their eyes, but she pushed through. She made her way down the aisle, ensuring everyone was following her instructions. Some passengers looked worried, while others were whispering anxiously to one another. As she passed by, Lisa noticed that some people were staring at her with a mix of fear and curiosity. She felt their eyes on her and remembered how she had acted earlier. This was her chance to prove that she could be professional no matter the circumstances. Back in the cockpit, James and Mike were busy monitoring the engine's status. They communicated with air traffic control, informing them of their situation. "Flight 247, we've received your report. We'll guide you for an emergency landing." The controller responded, their voice calm and reassuring. James relayed the information to Mike. "We'll need to prepare the cabin for landing. Can you assist me with the checklists?" "Absolutely," Mike replied, grabbing the necessary documents and going through the emergency procedures step by step. Meanwhile, Lisa returned to the cockpit. "Everyone is seated and buckled up," she reported, a sense of urgency in her voice. "Good job," James said, appreciating her quick response. "Now, we need to prepare for landing. I'll need you to help relay information to the passengers." Lisa nodded, feeling a rush of determination. She knew she had to step up, even if it meant putting aside her previous feelings. "What do you want me to say?" "Let them know we'll be landing shortly and that they should remain calm," James instructed. Lisa returned to the cabin and took a deep breath before addressing the passengers again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will be landing shortly. Please remain calm and keep your seatbelts fastened. Your safety is our top priority." The passengers listened, some gripping their armrests tightly. Lisa saw the worry on their faces, and it made her heart ache. She felt the weight of her role in this moment. She wanted to reassure them, to show them that they were safe. As the plane began its descent, James focused on navigating. The engines roared as he adjusted the throttle, keeping a steady course. Mike monitored the instruments, ensuring they were on track. "Speed is looking good," Mike said, his voice steady. "Let's get ready for landing," James replied, his focus unwavering. Lisa remained in the cabin, doing her best to maintain a calm presence. She walked through the aisles, checking on passengers and offering reassuring smiles. "We're going to be okay," she told them, trying to sound confident. In the cockpit, James and Mike prepared for the landing checklist. "We'll need to lower the landing gear and configure the flaps," James said, focused on the tasks ahead. "Got it," Mike replied, following along. They moved through the checklist, each step crucial for a safe landing. As they descended further, the landscape below came into view. Lisa glanced out the window, seeing the ground getting closer. She felt a mix of fear and determination. She was determined to help keep everyone calm, no matter what happened. "Everyone, please remain seated and keep your seatbelts fastened. We're getting close to landing," she announced again, her voice steady. The plane continued its descent, and the alarms in the cockpit were still ringing, reminding them of the urgency of the situation. James knew they had to land soon. "Prepare for the final approach," he instructed Mike. "Flaps down, gear down," Mike confirmed, ensuring everything was ready. With every passing moment, the cabin felt the tension rise. Passengers were holding their breath, and the whispers had quieted down. Lisa could feel the fear in the air, but she refused to let it overwhelm her. As the ground got closer, James focused intently on the runway ahead. "Here we go," he said, readying himself for the landing. Lisa, in the cabin, could see the runway too. "Hold on, everyone," she called out, her heart pounding. The plane touched down with a jolt, the sound of the wheels hitting the ground echoing in the cabin. Everyone felt the sudden change as the brakes engaged, slowing the aircraft down. James maneuvered the plane toward the taxiway, breathing a sigh of relief as they finally came to a stop. The cabin erupted into a mix of cheers and sighs of relief. Lisa rushed to the cockpit, her heart still racing. "We did it!" she exclaimed, a sense of triumph filling her. James looked at her, his expression serious but relieved. "Yes, we did. But we still need to get everyone off the plane safely." Lisa nodded, her adrenaline still pumping. She returned to the cabin and began directing passengers to remain seated until they received further instructions. As they waited, James and Mike communicated with air traffic control, ensuring that emergency crews were ready for any potential issues. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the doors were opened and passengers began to disembark. Lisa assisted, guiding everyone to safety and ensuring they exited calmly. As the last passenger left the plane, Lisa took a moment to breathe. The tension of the flight slowly melted away, replaced by a sense of accomplishment. She had faced her fears and risen to the occasion. Back in the cockpit, James and Mike exchanged relieved smiles. They had successfully navigated a dangerous situation, but the experience had changed them both. Lisa returned to the cockpit, still buzzing with adrenaline. "Thank you for trusting me back there," she said to James, her tone genuine. James looked at her, realizing how far they had come in such a short time. "You did great, Lisa. We all did. Let's keep this teamwork going." In that moment, the tensions from earlier began to dissolve. They had faced a challenge together, and it had brought them closer as a team. The incident had changed their dynamic, teaching them both valuable lessons about respect and collaboration. As the emergency crews arrived and the reality of the situation settled in, they knew that the flight would be remembered for more than just the incident. It was a reminder of the importance of working together and supporting one another, no matter the circumstances. Flight 247 had faced a crisis, but they had emerged stronger, ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. Part 4. Teamwork under pressure. After the emergency landing, Flight 247 had come to a stop on the runway, and a wave of relief washed over everyone. Passengers were slowly disembarking, some looking shaken but grateful. As they exited the plane, they expressed their thanks to Lisa and the crew. James and Mike, still in the cockpit, took a moment to breathe, letting the tension of the flight fade away. Once the cabin was clear, Lisa returned to the cockpit, still buzzing from the adrenaline of the emergency. She knocked gently on the door, and James looked up. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and disbelief. "Yeah, we did," James replied, his tone more relaxed now. "It was a team effort. I appreciate how you handled everything." Lisa felt a sense of pride swell within her. The earlier incident between them seemed distant now. "Thanks for trusting me," she said. "I wasn't sure I could step up like that." James nodded. "You did more than just step up. You helped keep everyone calm, which was crucial." He could see that she was starting to understand the importance of teamwork, and it gave him hope for their working relationship. As they prepared to leave the cockpit, emergency crews approached the plane to inspect it. James and Mike stepped out to meet them, while Lisa remained behind for a moment, reflecting on the flight. The earlier tensions felt like a shadow of the past, and she recognized how much had changed. In the following minutes, the emergency responders checked the plane and communicated with James and Mike about the engine issue. Lisa listened from a distance, feeling a sense of admiration for the crew's professionalism. They were working together seamlessly, and she wanted to be part of that. Once the inspection was complete, the crew gathered in a small area outside the plane to discuss what had happened. James took the lead, explaining the events of the flight to the responders. We had a warning light for engine failure shortly after takeoff. We managed to land safely, but we'll need to look into the cause. Lisa watched as James spoke confidently, her respect for him growing. He was calm under pressure, and it inspired her to be better. She decided to join the conversation. I just want to add that everyone in the cabin remained calm, thanks to the communication we had, she said, stepping forward. James smiled at her participation. Absolutely. It was a team effort back there, and I think it made a huge difference. The emergency responders nodded, appreciating their teamwork. They took notes, asking questions about the flight and how everyone reacted during the emergency. Lisa felt proud to contribute to the discussion, and she realized how important it was to share experiences. After the responders left, James turned to Lisa and Mike. Let's debrief about what happened. I want to make sure we learn from this experience. Good idea, Mike agreed, and they all moved to a nearby area where they could sit down and talk. As they gathered, Lisa felt nervous. She wanted to be honest about her feelings and actions during the flight, but she wasn't sure how James would react. First, I want to say thank you to both of you, James began. We faced a tough situation, and you both handled it well. Lisa, you stepped up when it mattered. Thank you, Lisa replied, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. I realized I needed to put aside my feelings and focus on the passengers. Mike chimed in. It's easy to get caught up in personal issues, but in moments like these, we have to remember that our main goal is safety. Lisa nodded, understanding the truth in his words. I know I didn't handle things well at first. I let my biases affect how I treated James, and that was wrong. James appreciated her honesty. It's important to recognize that we all have things to work on. I've had my struggles too, but today showed that we can come together when it matters. The conversation helped Lisa reflect on her actions. She realized that she had been focused on her own views rather than the bigger picture. The emergency had forced her to confront her biases and work as part of a team. James continued, let's talk about how we can improve our communication and teamwork. If we can address any issues before they escalate, we'll be better prepared in the future. Mike nodded. I think regular check-ins could help. We should support each other, especially during stressful moments. Lisa felt a sense of determination growing within her. I want to make a conscious effort to improve my attitude. I want to be a team player, no matter the situation. James smiled. That's a great mindset. We all have room for growth, and I'm glad you're willing to work on it. As they discussed strategies for better teamwork, Lisa felt more connected to her colleagues. They were all in this together, facing challenges and learning from each other. It was a valuable lesson that would stay with her for a long time. After their debrief, they decided to head back to the terminal. As they walked together, Lisa felt a sense of camaraderie forming between them. The earlier tension was fading, replaced by a shared experience that had brought them closer. Once inside the terminal, they were met with the grateful faces of the passengers who had safely disembarked. Many approached them to express their thanks, and Lisa felt a surge of pride. She had played a role in ensuring everyone's safety, and it was a powerful feeling. One passenger, an elderly man, walked up to Lisa with tears in his eyes. Thank you for keeping us calm, he said, his voice shaking slightly. It meant a lot to me. Lisa smiled, her heart warming. I'm just glad everyone is okay, she replied sincerely. As they continued to interact with passengers, Lisa noticed how they responded positively to her. She realized that her earlier behavior had not only affected her but also the people around her. She was determined to change that moving forward. After the passengers had left the terminal, the crew gathered for a brief meeting to discuss the flight and the events that had unfolded. James led the meeting, emphasizing the importance of communication and support. I want everyone to feel comfortable sharing their thoughts, James said. We're all here to learn from each other and grow. Lisa felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wanted to contribute positively, and she hoped her colleagues would see the change in her. As the meeting continued, she actively participated, sharing her insights and listening to others. Later, as they wrapped up, Mike turned to Lisa. "I'm glad to see you so engaged. It makes a difference," he said with a smile. "Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that," Lisa replied, feeling a sense of belonging in the team. After the meeting, James pulled Lisa aside. "I want to commend you for how you handled yourself today. You've shown growth, and I believe we can build on this moving forward." "Thank you, James," she said, genuinely grateful for his support. "I know I have a long way to go, but I'm committed to being better. Let's keep working together. We can face any challenge as a team," James said, a sense of optimism in his voice. As they left the terminal, Lisa felt a new sense of confidence. The day had started with conflict, but it had transformed into a powerful lesson about teamwork and understanding. She was determined to continue building on this experience, not just as a flight attendant but as a person. In the days that followed, Lisa made an effort to connect with her colleagues. She engaged in conversations, shared experiences, and focused on building positive relationships. She found that the more she opened up, the more others responded in kind. James noticed the change in Lisa. He appreciated her willingness to learn and grow, and it inspired him to continue fostering a supportive environment in the crew. Together, they worked on improving their communication, ensuring that everyone felt heard and valued. As time went on, the bond between the crew strengthened. They learned to lean on each other during stressful moments and celebrate their successes together. Lisa's attitude transformed, and she became a key player in creating a positive atmosphere on their flights. The experience from Flight 247 remained a cornerstone of their teamwork. It reminded them all of the importance of unity, respect, and understanding, no matter the challenges they faced. In the end, Lisa realized that her journey was about more than just overcoming personal biases. It was about becoming part of a team that worked together to create safe and enjoyable flights for everyone on board. She was grateful for the lessons learned and looked forward to many more successful journeys with her colleagues by her side. Part 5. Moving forward together. After the emergency landing of Flight 247, things began to change for Lisa, James, and Mike. They had faced a tough situation together, and it brought them closer as a team. With the experience fresh in their minds, they were ready to build a stronger, more supportive environment in the cockpit and the cabin. Reflections and changes. In the days that followed, Lisa took time to reflect on what happened during the flight. She realized how her earlier actions had affected everyone. The slap she had given James was not just a personal issue. It had real consequences. She understood that her biases had clouded her judgment, and she was determined to make things right. At the next crew meeting, Lisa decided to share her thoughts. "I want to thank everyone for their support after the flight," she began, looking at James and Mike. "I realized that I let my feelings get in the way of doing my job well. I want to be better." James nodded, appreciating her honesty. "It takes courage to admit when we've made mistakes. I'm glad you're willing to work on it," he said. Mike added, "We all have our challenges. What matters is how we support each other through them." Their discussion encouraged others to share their own experiences. Several crew members spoke about moments when they had struggled or felt overwhelmed. It was a powerful moment of vulnerability, and it helped everyone feel more connected. Building trust. As the weeks passed, Lisa made a conscious effort to improve her interactions with the crew. She focused on building trust, not just with James and Mike but with everyone she worked with. She took time to listen to her colleagues, asking about their experiences and sharing her own. One day, Lisa approached a new flight attendant named Sarah, who seemed a bit shy. "Hey, how are you doing? If you ever need anything, feel free to ask me," Lisa said, smiling warmly. Sarah looked surprised but smiled back. "Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that. I'm still getting used to everything." Over time, Lisa noticed that Sarah opened up more during flights. They worked well together, and Sarah began to feel more confident in her role. Lisa realized that small gestures could make a big difference. ######, the power of teamwork. On another flight, they faced a challenging situation when a passenger became ill mid-flight. James remained calm and quickly assessed the situation. Lisa, can you assist the passenger? Mike, let's prepare for a possible emergency landing, he instructed. Lisa sprang into action, her training kicking in. She moved quickly to the back of the plane, where the passenger was seated, looking pale and shaky. Hi there. I'm here to help. Can you tell me what's wrong? She asked gently. The passenger struggled to speak but managed to say they felt dizzy. Lisa immediately checked their pulse and reassured them. You're doing great. We're going to take care of you. As she provided comfort, she felt a sense of purpose. She was no longer focused on her past mistakes. She was fully present, helping someone in need. Meanwhile, James and Mike coordinated with air traffic control, preparing for an emergency landing. After the plane landed safely, the passenger received medical attention. Lisa felt proud of how everyone worked together. The experience reinforced the importance of teamwork, especially during emergencies. ##### continued growth. With each flight, Lisa continued to grow more confident. She embraced her role and became more proactive in ensuring passenger safety and comfort. She communicated openly with James and Mike, creating a positive atmosphere in the cockpit. James noticed the transformation in Lisa. You've really stepped into your role, he told her one day. Your positive attitude makes a difference for the whole team. Thank you, James, Lisa replied, feeling grateful for his support. I've learned so much from you both. It's amazing what we can accomplish together. The crew began to feel like a family. They celebrated small victories, shared laughs, and supported each other during tough moments. Lisa's willingness to learn and improve encouraged others to do the same. ##### preparing for the future. As the airline prepared for a busy travel season, Lisa and the crew discussed ways to enhance their service. They brainstormed ideas to make flights more enjoyable for passengers. Lisa suggested organizing small events during long flights, like trivia games or storytelling sessions. That sounds fun, Mike agreed. It would help lighten the mood on longer flights. James nodded, impressed with Lisa's initiative. Let's plan a few of these activities and see how the passengers respond. Could be a great way to connect with them. As they put their ideas into action, Lisa felt a sense of fulfillment. She realized that her earlier experiences had shaped her into a more compassionate and effective flight attendant. She was excited to share these moments with passengers. ##### a memorable flight. One day, during a long-haul flight, Lisa and the crew implemented their new ideas. They started with a trivia game, and passengers responded enthusiastically. Laughter filled the cabin as people enjoyed the fun distraction. Later, Lisa noticed a family sitting together, looking a bit anxious. She approached them, smiling warmly. Hi there. How are you doing? Would you like to join our trivia game? The kids' faces lit up with excitement. Yes, please, they exclaimed, and soon, the whole family joined in. Lisa watched as the atmosphere shifted. The anxiety of the flight faded away. After the game, she took a moment to talk with the family. How are you feeling now? She asked, genuinely interested. We're feeling much better. Thank you, the mother replied, grateful for Lisa's kindness. This moment reminded Lisa of why she loved her job. She was not just serving passengers. She was creating meaningful connections and making their travel experience better. ##### reflecting on the journey. As the weeks turned into months, Lisa's growth continued. She often reflected on the day of the emergency landing. It had been a turning point in her career and her life. She had learned that mistakes could lead to valuable lessons, and teamwork was essential. James and Mike frequently praised her efforts, and the bond among the crew deepened. They began to trust one another more, knowing they could rely on each other in any situation. One day, during a crew meeting, Lisa shared her journey. I just want to say thank you for believing in me. I've learned so much, and I'm grateful for the support you've all given me, she said. her voice filled with emotion. James smiled, proud of her progress. "We're a team and we lift each other up. Your growth has inspired us all." The crew exchanged smiles, feeling connected by their shared experiences. They had faced challenges together and emerged stronger. Hashtag, 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 hashtag looking ahead. As the airline continued to grow and evolve, Lisa felt excited about the future. She was ready to face new challenges with confidence, knowing she had a supportive team by her side. With each flight, she embraced her role more fully, creating a positive environment for passengers and her colleagues. Lisa had transformed from someone unsure of herself into a valued member of the crew, committed to excellence. Her journey was just beginning, but she was eager to see where it would lead. The lessons learned from that fateful flight would stay with her forever, guiding her as she navigated the skies and the complexities of working with others. As Lisa stood in the terminal one day, watching passengers board a flight, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had come a long way, and she was proud of who she had become. The challenges had shaped her, and the support of her team had made all the difference. With a smile on her face, she looked forward to the many adventures that awaited her in the skies. She knew that, together with her crew, they could face anything that came their way. It was a new chapter in her career, filled with promise, teamwork, and a commitment to making every flight a positive experience for everyone on board.